The moment the wagon wheel stopped outside their old cabin, Sarah knew something terrible was about to happen. The air felt too still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Her mother lay inside the dim cabin, coughing so hard it shook the frail bed frame. Her little brother Tom stood by the window, watching Sarah with wide, frightened eyes. Their life had been falling apart for months, but that day felt different, heavier. Like the world was shifting under her feet. Sarah pushed open the cabin door and stepped inside, brushing snow off her shoulders. She carried only a small bundle of food she had earned by mending clothes for half the settlement. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Her mother tried to sit up when she entered. "You're late," she whispered. "I worked as long as I could." Sarah replied gently, "We need the money." Her mother smiled sadly, a smile that made Sarah's chest ache. Before she could ask why she looked so troubled, a sound echoed outside. The slow, steady roll of a wagon, climbing the rocky trail toward their home. Tom rushed in Sarah. "Someone's coming." Visitors never came this deep into the Montana mountains, not unless something was wrong. Sarah walked outside, her hands trembling. A large wagon pulled by 2 strong horses stopped in their clearing. An older woman stepped down, wrapped in a fine coat and a confident air that didn't belong anywhere near poverty. Sarah knew her. Martha Brennan. A woman from one of the richest ranching families in the entire region. A woman Sarah's father used to guide through mountain passes before he died. "Hello, Sarah," Martha said softly. "It has been a long time." Sarah's heart raced. "Why are you here?" Martha didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at the cabin with a look Sarah couldn't read. "May I come inside?" "I need to speak with your mother." Inside, her mother struggled to sit up straighter when Martha entered. There was guilt in her eyes. That scared Sarah more than anything. "Martha," her mother whispered, "thank you for coming." Sarah froze. "You knew she was coming?" she asked sharply. Her mother could only nod. Martha stepped forward. "Your mother wrote to me 3 weeks ago. She told me everything, her sickness, your struggles, the debt at the trading post." Sarah's jaw tightened. "We don't need charity. This isn't charity," Martha replied calmly. "It's an arrangement. One your mother has already agreed to." Quote. Sarah felt like the floor disappeared beneath her. What arrangement? Her mother covered her mouth with a shaking hand. Tears spilled down her face. "I did it to save you," she whispered. "To save Tom. I couldn't die knowing you 2 would starve." "Ma, what did you do?" Martha pulled out a folded paper. "My nephew, Caleb Brennan, needs a wife," she said plainly. Sarah felt like she'd been struck. "Hey, a wife." Martha nodded. 2 years ago, he was attacked by a grizzly. His legs were badly damaged. He walks with a cane now. The injury changed him. He's shut himself away, bitter, angry, refusing to see anyone. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "What does that have to do with me?" "He needs companionship," Martha said, "a partner. Someone steady. Someone strong." Her mother choked on a sob. "In exchange," Martha continued, "I will pay for your mother's treatment immediately. Tom will be sent to a proper school. Your family will never struggle again." "No," Sarah whispered. "Number. You sold me. I saved you." Her mother cried, "Sarah, I'm dying. When I'm gone, what happens to you? What happens to Tom? You needed a way out. And he needs someone too." Sarah turned away, tears burning. She felt trapped in a life she never chose. Martha spoke quietly. "You leave for the Brennan Ranch in 1 week. The wedding will take place there. Caleb has agreed." Sarah's voice cracked. "What if I refuse?" Martha met her eyes. "Then your mother dies without medicine. Tom grows up in poverty. And winter will take everything from you." It was the truth, a cruel truth. That night, Sarah lay awake in the loft, staring at the wooden beams above her. Tom climbed up and curled beside her. "Are you really going to leave us?" he whispered. "I don't want to," she said softly, "but I have to. For you." For Ma, Tom clung to her, and she held him tight, wishing she could be as strong as he needed her to be. 7 days later, The wagon returned. Sarah hugged her mother and Tom one last time. She didn't cry in front of them. She waited until she climbed into the wagon and watched the only home she ever knew fade behind the trees. Hours into the long journey through the mountains, Martha's sharp eyes studied her. "You're frightened." "Martha said, I'm going to marry a man I've never met," Sarah whispered. "A man who doesn't want me. A man angry at the world. He was a good man once," Martha said before the accident. Before he lost everything. The sun dipped low as they climbed higher, deeper into the wilderness. When the Brennan Ranch finally came into view, a massive log home nestled against towering peaks, Sarah's heart pounded. This would be her new life. This would be her new husband. A stranger. A broken man. A mountain legend destroyed by a bear. And she did not know yet that what he did next would shock everyone. Snowflakes drifted across the high valley as the wagon rolled to a stop in front of the Brennan Ranch. Sarah stepped down slowly, her legs stiff from the long ride. The house before her was huge, built from thick logs, strong and silent against the wind. Smoke curled from the chimney, and mountains rose sharply behind it like giants keeping watch. Everything felt too big, too cold, too far from the world she knew. Martha placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Come inside, dear. Rest first. Tomorrow you'll meet Caleb." Sarah nodded, but fear pressed against her ribs. Inside, warm firelight filled the main room. Animal skins hung on the walls, clean and heavy. Maps marked the far side of the room. This wasn't a home. It felt like the living place of someone who used to fight mountains and win, someone who now hid from them. Martha showed her a room upstairs. The bed was soft, the quilt thick, the window overlooking a valley that looked endless. It should have felt safe. It didn't. "You'll meet him when the time is right," Martha said gently. "Sleep now." But Sarah didn't sleep. Not for hours. Not until exhaustion forced her eyes closed. The next morning, she stood in the quiet kitchen, trying to steady her hands, while Hannah, the ranch cook, set dough on a table and gave her a quick smile. "Don't fret, child. He ain't as frightening as he makes himself." Sarah wasn't sure she believed that, because when she finally met him, everything inside her went still. She heard the sound first. A slow, uneven thump against the wooden floor. A cane. Her heart jumped as a tall man stepped into the doorway of the dining room. Broad shoulders, dark hair brushing his collar. A face cut with sharp lines. Handsome once, but now shadowed by pain. And eyes. Gray eyes like winter storms. He didn't look at her as a man looks at a bride. He looked at her like someone braced for disappointment. "You must be Sarah," he said, his voice deep, rough. Sarah forced herself to lift her chin. "And you must be Caleb." Quote, "He shifted on his weak leg, jaw tight. So we're getting married tomorrow." He said matter-of-factly. "Yes," she whispered, wishing her hands would stop shaking. "Tell me something." He asked, "Did you choose this?" She felt anger spark inside her. "Did you?" She shot back. Caleb blinked, surprised. "No," he admitted, "but I'm a crippled man who can't chase a wife even if I wanted one. My options are limited." Sarah's throat tightened. "My excuse is that my mother is dying. My brother is 11, and we had no money left. I didn't choose this life either, but I'm here." Caleb studied her for a long moment. Something softened. "Just a flicker. At least you're honest," he said quietly. He turned to leave, leaning heavily on his cane. But Sarah called after him without thinking. "They say you were a mountain man." "A real one," he froze. "I was," he said without turning. What happened? Silence hung between them, so heavy it felt like snow in the lungs. "The bear," he said at last. "The bear took my legs, but I lost the rest on my own." He walked away, his cane tapping softly. That night she couldn't stop hearing those words. The next morning, with only a handful of ranch hands present, the preacher spoke the vows. Sarah's voice trembled. Caleb's was flat and distant. When the preacher said, "You may kiss the bride," Caleb didn't even try. He simply nodded stiffly and limped back to his study, leaving her standing alone. It was not a wedding. It was a contract. The next days were quiet, lonely. Sarah took meals alone. Caleb didn't come near her except in passing, and when he did, his jaw was locked tight with anger or pain. It was hard to tell which. Everyone at the ranch was polite, but kept their distance. They whispered about her when they thought she couldn't hear. She married him out of desperation. Poor girl, she's stuck with a man who can barely walk. Each word stung. One morning, frustration finally boiled over. Sarah walked to Caleb's study and knocked hard. "Enter," he said. She stepped inside. "We need to talk," she said firmly. Caleb lowered his paperwork. About what? About how we're going to live. Sarah said, "I don't want a marriage made of silence. We may not love each other. We may not even like each other yet. But we're married. We share a home. We need to at least talk." Caleb tapped his cane lightly against the floor, his eyes unreadable. "And what do you suggest?" he asked. "We share meals," Sarah said. "We speak like two people trying to survive under the same roof. No pretending, no faking. Just trying." Caleb stared at her, long and hard. Finally, he nodded. "Fine," he said. "We'll dine together." Sarah exhaled in relief. "But don't expect cheerful conversation," he added flatly. "I expect nothing," she replied. Except effort at supper that night, he actually appeared. He moved slowly, painfully. She waited until he sat before sitting herself. For a few minutes they only passed food across the long wooden table. Then he broke the silence. "How is your mother?" Sarah blinked. She hadn't expected kindness. "She's better," Sarah said softly. "The medicine Martha brought helped." Caleb nodded, eyes lowered. "I'm glad." The next night he asked about Tom. The night after that, he told her the weather would turn soon. Small things, tiny steps. One evening, she found him sitting on the porch, staring at the mountains with a look that didn't belong to the man she'd married. It belonged to someone wild and whole. She sat beside him. "You miss them," she said quietly. "Every day," he whispered. She hesitated, then asked, "Will you tell me what it was like?" Being a mountain man, Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he began to talk. For the first time, his voice changed, filled with life, with memory, with grief and pride woven together like two threads that refused to separate. He told her about tracking elk through snow, climbing peaks at dawn, reading the sky like a map only he understood. And as she listened, Sarah finally understood something. She wasn't living with a stranger. She was living with a broken legend. A man whose body had failed him, but whose heart still beat with the mountains. And she didn't know yet. She was about to change his life more than he would ever change hers. Winter tightened its grip on the mountains. But inside the Brennan Ranch, something unexpected was beginning to thaw. What started as small conversations turned into longer talks by the fire. What began as two strangers making the best of a contract slowly grew into something neither of them had planned. One quiet morning, Sarah stood on the porch watching fresh snow blanket the valley. The world looked peaceful and untouched. She didn't hear Caleb step out until his cane tapped softly behind her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he murmured. She nodded. "My father used to say the mountains in winter demand respect." Caleb gave a faint smile. "Your father was right." She glanced at him carefully. "Do you miss riding up there?" He let out a breath. "More than I can say." Sarah hesitated, fear and hope mixing inside her. "Then let's go," she said. He turned sharply. "Go? Sarah, I can barely make it across the yard some days." "You can ride," she said. "I've seen you in the barn. We don't have to go far. Just enough for you to feel the mountains again." For a long moment he didn't speak. She saw the longing in his eyes, fighting with the fear of failing, fighting with pride, fighting with the memory of pain. Slowly he nodded. "All right," he said softly, "but if I can't." "Then we turn back," she finished. No shame in trying. They saddled the horses together. Caleb moved slowly, careful with every motion. With Jacob's help, he mounted using a special block. Then they started. The first few minutes were tense. Caleb held the reins too tight, his shoulders stiff. But as the horses moved through the trees and the cold air hit their faces, something in him began to loosen. He looked around with the eyes of a man seeing home after years in darkness. "Look there," he said suddenly. Fresh coyote tracks, a spark lit in him. His voice gained strength. He pointed out winter changes in the snow, how the wind bent the branches, how animal trails cut through the forest. He taught Sarah how to read signs she never noticed before. "You still know every inch of these mountains," she said. He swallowed hard. "I thought I lost this part of me." "You didn't," she said gently. "You just needed someone to bring you back." They reached a small ridge overlooking the valley. Caleb stopped his horse. His breath caught this, he whispered. "This is where I used to come when life felt heavy." Sarah watched him quietly. Snow sparkled on the peaks. The wind hummed through the trees, and for the first time since she'd met him, Caleb looked alive. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "You have no idea how much this means." Sarah smiled softly. "We can come again." "Whenever you like." They rode back slowly, both changed in ways they didn't speak aloud. That ride became the first of many. Over weeks, something gentle grew between them. Caleb laughed sometimes. Sarah looked forward to hearing his cane tap in the hallway. They shared stories, shared worries, shared quiet moments that felt safe. One night, after supper, they sat by the fire. Caleb stared into the flames, thinking. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I never asked, but have you forgiven your mother?" She looked down at her hands. "Some days I think I have. Some days it still hurts. She made a desperate choice." He said, "One that gave me a wife and gave you a chance at life." Sarah's voice was soft. I know Caleb reached for her hand, slowly, carefully, as if unsure whether he was allowed. She didn't pull away. "I want you to know something." He said, "I didn't just accept you because Martha insisted. I accept you now because I want you here." Sarah felt her heartbeat quicken Caleb. "I know how we started," he said, "but if I could go back and choose freely, I think I would choose you." A single tear escaped her eye. She squeezed his hand gently. "I think I would choose you too." Their first kiss was quiet and soft, like the snow outside, but it changed everything. From that night on, they were no longer strangers. They walked through winter together, building a marriage shaped not by a contract but by choice. Months later, spring melted the snow and brought life back to the valley. Sarah's mother and Tom came to visit. Caleb welcomed them warmly, guiding Tom around the ranch and answering his endless questions. One evening, Sarah sat with her mother on the porch. "Are you happy, Sarah?" her mother whispered. Sarah looked out at the mountains, the ranch, and Caleb standing with Tom near the barn. "Yes," she said softly, "I really am." Her mother cried with relief, and Sarah held her hand. As months turned into years, the ranch grew, their home filled with laughter and warmth. Caleb learned to live with his injury, no longer seeing it as an end, but a new beginning. Sarah found purpose and strength she never knew she had. One summer afternoon, she and Caleb rode up the ridge again, their hands brushing as they sat on horseback. "Do you ever regret how we started?" Sarah asked. Caleb shook his head. "No," he said, "because it brought me you." She leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "And you brought me everything I thought I lost." She whispered, "Family, safety, love." They sat together, the mountains rising around them like old friends. Two people once bound by desperation, now bound by love they chose every day. And everyone who knew their story said the same thing. No one expected the disabled mountain man to love so fiercely. No one expected the girl who was forced into marriage to find her true home. No one expected the impossible to become the most beautiful thing in the mountains. But it did, because sometimes the life you never wanted becomes the life you were meant for.